I'm calling this one my Spring Fling Throw Quilt. The top, which is what you're looking at here, is 82 inches horizontally and 36 inches vertically. And I used my disappearing 9-patch block to make this throw quilt. Let me pull you in a little closer. So what I'm going to do in this video is I am going to attach the batting. I'm going to use Hobbs double-sided fusible batting. And I have pieced together some leftover pieces of Cuddle fabric for my backing. And let me show you that process now. Stay tuned. I absolutely love Designs by Juju. She has created her trademarked end-to-end quilting patterns, and they stitch out so wonderfully. All the designs and all of her products are just absolutely amazing. So if you are looking for embroidery designs, check out Designs by Juju. But now we're going to stick to the end-to-end quilting design. So what I did was I actually stitched out the design that I'm going to use, and I cut off the extra fabric. I kind of squared it up. And the reason why I did that is there's a couple of ways to sort of get a template as to where the stitches will lie on your project. So one way to get your template printed so that you know where to hoop and where your stitches will lie is using this print and stick inkjet paper by Dime or Designs in Machine Embroidery. The reason why I did not use this project or this product is because my design is a vertical design, and it's larger than the 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. So this basically is an 8.5 and 11 inch by paper, and then my design is a little bit taller than that, and so I was like, whatever, I'll just go ahead and stitch it out. It's not a problem. The stitch out allows me to see what it's going to look like anyway. So what this is I just used some red thread so that I could actually see the design, and once I printed it out, I squared it up, I cut off the excess fabric, and then I have my clear grid for my hoop. So this is the hoop I'll be using, and it's the 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. So essentially, once everything is hooped up, actually I'm not going to use this hoop, but this is the grid for this. So it kind of looks like this. And so as you can see, it helps center your design inside the hoop. But I had this idea of like, okay, how am I going to know where these stitches will fall? So I'll bring you in closer here. So this grid has holes. And so what I did was I took like a permanent Sharpie marker, and I just put just dots here. I put one in the center, and then I put one down here and one down here. And that just allowed me to line this template up on the back of this grid. So then I thought, every time I rehoop, unless I tape it, it's going to shimmy around. So the reason why I don't want to undo it is because I just took some clear tape, and I just taped this sew out onto the back of this grid so that when I'm moving, shifting my project around, I can line it up easier. I will not again be using the hoop that came with my machine. I am going to be using this snap hoop by Designs and Machine Embroidery Dime. And so I'm also using the hoop guard. And so once I get to the machine and I start stitching, you'll see why this is such a valuable tool for this project. So essentially it's going to look like this. This is the hoop, and then this is the placement grid. So as I hoop it, I'm going to use this grid to help me sort of make sure my design is as centered as possible. But here's a catch. The catch is when you use this grid, you can use it pretty accurately to do the end-to-end process. And so as you shift, like say you stitch here, and then you stitch here, and then you stitch here, the end-to-end connection points will keep the design sort of going horizontally correctly. But you know, over hoopings, this has a tendency to sort of shimmy down or up a little bit. So you can kind of keep it into like this end to this end, and then you scooch it over and it starts here and stops here. You can keep that straight, but at the top, it starts getting a little wonky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out sort of where I want my stitches to lay. And then I'm going to put some painter's tape across this part of my project. And then I'm going to put an embroidery floss stay stitch here so that I can keep my design horizontally correct as it's being rehooped in the machine. So stay tuned and I'll show you that process next. Hey, I am back for the next step in this process. Because you are my friend, I will let you in on yet another secret. I decided not to use the method of marking my horizontal lines on my quilt sandwich because if you look at this quilt top, it has sashing. Sashing here, and a sashing on the bottom. So because my embroidery design, essentially, let me get you in close here. The embroidery design I think I'm going to mark it here. So that's the top line of the grid, and it'll stitch, stitch, and it'll get down to here. So it's in the middle of this sashing. So I'm just going to eyeball it and then rehoop this way so that it finishes embroidering. I am not one of those embroiderers who have to have it perfect. The reason why there are so many ahas during this video is because this is the first time I've actually tried to connect the stitches. Typically what I do is when I use the end-to-end quilting designs by Juju, I just quilt one block at a time. So the precision in connecting the dots, you know, the end dot here and then rehooping so that the next dot connects. I don't do that because it's not really that relevant to me that my project looks like it's been sent to a long armor. My goal in embroidering my projects is so that the quilt sandwich stays in place and doesn't come apart and it looks somewhat pretty. So typically what I do is I would take probably this segment, because this is a large block. This is like a 13-inch block. So typically what I would do is I would take this quadrant right here and I would put essentially a design, the swirl in here, and then I would rehoop and put it in here. Or since I have a larger hoop, I would just sort of embroider this area here and then rehoop and sort of embroider in here. And then depending on how fancy I was feeling, sometimes I've done projects where I stitch words in the sashing, or I'll stitch a name, or I'll stitch a date in the sashing. So my embroidery style for quilting isn't so that my embroidery looks like it's been to a long armor. I'm more into the style of showcasing the embroidery within my quilt project. So that's why there's so many like, I'm going to do it this way. And then, oh, guess what? It didn't work. So let's move on to the actual process, which is using Darrow over here, which is my Stellar embroidery machine by Brother, to complete this project finally. Stay tuned. We are in the home stretch. We are actually going to start embroidering. So this is Darrow. He is my Brother Stellar embroidery machine. And as you look at this shot, you're like, Tammy, what in the world is that contraption? Well, this contraption is called the Weightless Quilter, and it's another wonderful product from Dime, Designs of Machine Embroidery. And what it does is it basically suspends the bulk or the weight of your quilt so that when your embroidery machine, the hoop is moving around, this part of your project is not creating weight. And so what I mean by that is if this were not up here, this part of the quilt would be hanging off this table and it would ride on the floor, right? And so when it's on the floor, as the embroidery hoop is moving around, it creates drag, and that drag causes tension, which could throw off your embroidery design. So that's what problem this weightless quilter solves. So I'm just going to show you sort of how, if you're considering this project or this, I'm sorry, if you're considering this product, what type of space you need. I know that Dime has created a tabletop version, which I do not own. I just own the regular one. And I think this retails at about $300. And so this is what it looks like on the floor. And so you would need, you know, this much space. And I guess this is about, maybe this is 36 inches by like 36 inches or 48 inches or something like that. And so then this is what it looks like from the back. This is the back of my project. And then as you can see, that's the end of the table. And so this table, I think is a 3-foot table. I'm not sure. And so this is what it looks like from this angle. And you can see that my project or my quilt is completely suspended so that I don't have the drag when the machine is embroidering. Now, another tool that I love from Designs in Machine Embroidery is not only the snap hoop, but this gadget right here. And this is the hoop guard. And what this does is, as you can see, remember this project is, what was it, like 83 inches wide or something like that. So we have, and I'm going to start the embroidery in the center of the project. So we have half the bulk here, which is being suspended, and the other half of the bulk is behind this hoop guard. And so what this does, as you'll see in a moment, is when the embroidery machine starts moving and this hoop starts moving around, this bulk does not fall into your sewing field and create stitches where you don't want them. So they have two different sizes. They have this long size for this hoop, and then they have one that's about half the size. And so what I typically do is make a nice little roll up here. And then as you'll see in a second, it just stays safely back there so it doesn't fall into the sewing field. So remember that grid I showed you earlier and how I printed out or stitched out the template? Here it is on the actual hooped part of the process. So this is where I was kind of describing to you earlier, where I was like, oh, I'm going to put the painter's tape and put the embroidery floss and la, la, la. Well, I didn't do that, but I just lined it up right there, because what's going to happen is at the end of this stitch, I'm basically going to scooch this whole thing upwards and reshift it or rehoop it. And so this is what it looks like. So I'm going to remove this and we are going to get stitching. Stay tuned. I've loaded my design onto the machine. I'm using this sort of lime green thread color. This is a thread by Madeira, and I'm using that color because it kind of matches with the project, and yeah, that's what I picked up. So here we go. It's all loaded, and I am going to start the embroidery process so that you can see how this weightless quilter works. So I need to do this. Now that it's green, I just press go and watch this. The embroidery is completed, and you know, I'm so sorry, but you can see the stippling here, but the color of the thread, there's not enough contrast to really appreciate the quality of the stitches, but you get the idea. So what I've done here is this purple dot, and oh, by the way, before I forget to say it, when you're doing this process, make sure you use a friction pen or some sort of ink that disappears or can be removed, because you do not want that permanently in your project. The person that I'm gifting this project to will not mind that there are a couple of permanent colors there or permanent marking there. So I used a permanent marker just for the purposes of you being able to see in detail how to do this end-to-end quilting project. This purple dot right here represents where the stitches start, and then this purple dot represents where the stitches ended. So what happens, or what will happen next is, remember how I use this grid? I use this grid to line everything up. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to show you how I rehoop. So essentially, I am going to, let me show you. This is how the magnetic hoop works. You literally, and I'm using my right hand and holding the camera with my left hand so that you can see how easy it is to do this. You just lift up the magnetic top part, you scooch it over here, and then I'm just going to kind of lay it on top. And then I'm going to, well, if I had both hands, I would be able to, actually, let me show you. Like that. And then I'm going to shift this whole quilt sandwich up this way so that this dot is going to be in this position. And then I am going to take my template and line up this new dot, that dot. Once it's shifted over, I'm going to line it up with this dot and then make sure it's straight. And then I'm going to put this hoop piece back on and keep going with the embroidery process. So that's what will happen next. And so once I rehoop it, I will show you. Actually, hang on. Don't judge me, y'all. I am doing this real time. Let me scooch this over so you can see it. So wait, hey, hang on. There we go. So see that dot is kind of moving to my left. And so I'm shimming it over. And then what happens next is you just sort of unroll your roll here, and then you sort of reposition it like this. And then this dot is there. So I'm doing the best I can with one hand. Then I put this here like, see how that dot lined up? This is the dot that I put on the project. And then this is the dot, the dot from the template. So here's the trick. When you line it up, it lined up perfectly. But you have to make sure that underneath all of this is the bottom part. And that's one of the beauties with the magnetic hoop, is that when you're re-hooping, you do not have to take this whole system off of your embroidery machine. If you're using your traditional hoops, you would have to remove this whole thing off and put it back on. So with the magnetic snap hoop, it just stays on. See, look. There it is. It's still connected. So this is my sandwich. I'm rolling it back over. So you see how like right here is the dot on the project. And then this is the dot on the template, and it's kind of lined up. What I'm noticing here is a little too tight because I have to take the top part of that hoop and it needs to snap back here. And so you need to make sure that the template is placed so that, you know, like right now, it's placed good here because this is metal. I can feel it, and I'm just going to put it on top. However, this is a little tight. So I need actually both of my hands to fix this. So I'm going to fix that, and then I will bring you back to show you the next stitch out. Stay tuned. Here is the second hooping, and let me point out to you why it's important to use not only your template. And again, if I were using a smaller design, I would have printed out the template on the transfer sticky paper from Dime because it would have made it more accurate. But here was that original dot. And remember how I used my template? I thought it was all lined up. Here is where that second hooping stitching started. So it's off by, that's probably like a ½ inch. Again, it doesn't bother me, but for those of you who want to get that perfect lining up of the end-to-end stitches, what you would do is, I have a Brother machine, and so the machine that I have uses we call it like the snowball sticker to make sure that your stitch point is where you want it to be. So I would either use this, or you can buy these from Dime, and these are Target stickers as well. So the way to prevent this from happening is to use a Target sticker and make sure that your needle lines up exactly where you want it. So essentially, like if I were using the snowball, I would put it there on that previous one, or if I'm using this one, it would go in the center, and I would just make sure that my needle is going in the center of that square. So what I'm going to do now is finish up stitching this project, and I will show you the finished results. Stay tuned. Ta-da! We made it. Thank you for sticking with me this long. We are at the end of the project. This is my spring fling throw quilt that I made using the Disappearing 9 patch quilt block. And I quilted this throw quilt using the end-to-end designs by Juju. I really like how this project came out. This is the back of the cuddle fabric, and for the most part, the stitches sink into the loft of the cuddle fabric, so you don't really have to worry so much about these little strings right here. Although today I'm feeling a little particular and I'm going to go ahead and cut them. There's the tie out stitches where the embroidery starts and stops. There's a major area there, and then there's some more down here, but over on this side they're kind of hidden, so I won't be so particular about it. Let me show you the front of this project. So here we go. This is what it looks like. Came out pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with the results. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a quilt label for the back of this project. So make sure you check out that video on how I use Designs by Juju to create my quilt label for the back of this project. The next thing I'll do after that, once I attach the quilt label, I am going to square this up so that I can prepare this project for binding. I have a secret way that I bind my quilt, so make sure you stay tuned and you check out that video as well. Thank you so much for joining me today, and until next time, keep quilting something beautiful. Bye bye.